Howdy folks, and welcome back. Today, I have a bit of a different video for you. In a previous video, I had talked about how when I design a creature, at times I would truly have just a small little layout and I would add and go from there. Well, I thought this drawing would be a perfect example of this. In this video, my hope is that I will be able to explain a little more in depth my thinking as you are watching the art happen in real time. If you don't want to hear me yapping though, and you don't want to spend however long this video is, there is a time-lapse short that's also available. So first up, as you can probably tell, I do all of my rough sketches on paper first. I find it easier for me to look at rough sketches when it's on paper, and I much prefer the feel of pencil on paper when I am doing just random chicken scratches all over the place. When I'm happy enough, I will transfer everything into Procreate and start digitizing it. Now, in this case though, all I have are two limbs, an eel-like body, a head, and a mouth. So now I have to start thinking about, well, what needs to be added? What sort of features need to be given to make it start to seem like its own thing? To start off, I gave the tail a pointed look. Where there's no clear difference between the body and the tail, I have now given it this pointed appearance. This helps break up the monotony of the eel-like body. You saw me make the eye, which itself was rather simple, along with just some weird pupils. Honestly, nothing says I have to stick with only natural pupils, so I can go hog wild for all I care. I think it's more important though that you see or just watched what I failed at. This was my first time trying to make a back fin that sort of curved with the body, and I failed. I just couldn't figure out how to get it to look right. Failure is, of course, part of the process, and that's okay. I ended up ditching the idea, but now I know that this is something that I'm going to have to work on, as well as many, many other things. I didn't want to cut that out, though, because I think it's important that you guys watch and see failure, and that it's okay, especially during the design process. I still like the concept of the fins idea, so I added a ridge to the character's head, as well as two fin-like appendage items to the sides of the arms. Now, later there will be back legs, as you'll see here in a little bit, and this is where my sort of second failure comes in. I tried to do the same ridged look on the back, and it just never really looked right. I think in part that failure is due to a lack of understanding of how perspective worked, but instead I decided to sort of pivot and change that back fin to where it's on the very back end of the creature, so as if its tail was going up, you wouldn't necessarily have that 3D perspective. But without being very good at perspective, this is definitely something I will have to work with. I want to skip ahead a little bit to where the actual design is completed, and now it comes down to the color. I knew from the start that this was going to be a two-colored creature, nothing super over the top or fancy. The body would be one color and the fins would be another. What those colors would be, though, proved to be a little bit more difficult than I first imagined. So here's the thing with color and myself. I have a heavy preference for blues, grays, blacks, and whites. It's mostly what my real-life wardrobe consists of, although as I record this, I am wearing a red shirt, so take that as you will. And these are cool color combinations, but have you seen real marine life before? It is so incredibly colorful. I have to branch out and use other shades, and for this creature, I decided to try just that. As you can see, the first color I am trying is a very bright green. Now I can't fully break habit and decide to have a light blue for the fin-like extremities. The issue being right now that, in my opinion, it just looks a little off. I can't really explain why, I don't like it. So I'm gonna be playing around with the colors a little bit. I don't necessarily have to make it look perfect, but I do want there to be a significant difference between the body and the fin's color. Since we're on the subject of color, I should talk a little about a gameplay and design mechanic I'll be using. There's going to be about 20 odd fish that have an alternative color pattern to them. They will be harder to mutate, but they're also going to be stronger variants to their base design, as well as have stronger abilities. It's just not going to be a number increase. Knowing that this is a mechanic, it's important for me to keep an eye on different color combinations in case I choose this specific design to be quote-unquote evolved. In the end, I chose to go with a light lime color, and I kept the blue fins as is. Something about the muted green over the brighter one gives this creature the feeling of being almost like a dragon, but in reality, it's actually based off of a mutated sea snake. Once the base colors are done, I have to decide if I'm going to add any markings to the body. I ended up choosing not to, but until the card is printed, I can always go back and add stripes or dots or what have you. What's next up though is the blending portion. At first, I tried a Gaussian blur to blend where the blue and green mix to make it look a little more natural, but no dice, it didn't really look good. So I switched to the smudge tool for a more controlled blending. I imagine in Procreate there are easier and or better ways to blend these colors together. I sadly don't fully know them, so if you do, please let me know. You would be helping me out quite a bit. I'll admit it, I'm a big fan of sharp, pointy teeth when it comes to my creatures, and so I'll admit that many of my creatures will probably be more on the predator side than the prey side, and this is no different as I go in and add a little bit of the sharp, pointy teeth. Now, the reason I chose the dark gray over the black for the inside of the mouth was to show off the teeth a little bit better. Now, the outline of the teeth being black would have blended in too much with the teeth, giving it this very kind of odd appearance. In some creatures, it actually makes it look better, not so much in this case though. I chose purple for the iris color, but the last stage is shading. Now, shading and I have a great relationship. I don't do it, and it doesn't ruin my work. Sadly, without shading, it looks, well, literally two-toned. I will be the first to admit, I am not an accomplished artist, but I do know that shading is something that I just have to get better at, as it'll make my artwork just look better in general. So, continuing to practice, I went with a darker hue of the lime green anywhere that was most likely to overlap like skin on skin, or where a shadow would most likely naturally have fallen. I would add that darker hue. I also did the same with the fins, but instead of making it shadows, I was simply just adding a little bit of color so as to make the fins pop a little bit more. And with that, this is the completed piece known as the Nessie Gator. It's taken a piece from the Loch Ness Monster for its build and gator for its mouth. I don't necessarily intend to do these sorts of videos all the time, but I hope you enjoyed this one and that it helped you a little bit when it came to design and showed you sort of what my thought process is like. With that, if you could do me the kindness of commenting, and subscribing. As well, we have a Discord up and running that has already proven invaluable for parts of the card design. So thank you to all of those who have participated in that discussion. I cannot thank you enough. With that though, thank you all for watching and have a great rest of your day. Peace.